Justice, it's often said, must not only be done, it must also be seen to be done. The trial of Armenian citizens apprehended following Azerbaijan's September 2023 counter-terrorism operation in Karabakh has been characterized in Baku as a vital exercise of state sovereignty and restorative justice, aimed at addressing the legacy and wrongs of the past conflict. In Armenia, although not uniformly and not necessarily as an official position of the government in Yerevan, the same proceedings have been viewed very differently by some, at times even portrayed as a perversion of justice. The judicial process itself began in January 2025, and on the 5th of February 2026, the Baku Military Court delivered verdicts in a high-profile trial involving 15 Armenian citizens detained in Azerbaijan's Karabakh region in September-October of 2023. Some of those were apprehended whilst attempting to leave Azerbaijan's sovereign territory via the Lachen border checkpoint. Others were detained in Khankandi. One case involved voluntary surrender. According to the verdicts announced in court, 5 defendants were sentenced to life imprisonment, including Araik Harutyunyan, whose role in the shelling of Azerbaijan's Barda city during the Second Karabakh War was later acknowledged in a televised statement. The remaining defendants received long-term prison sentences of up to 20 years. This is fundamentally and strictly speaking an internal judicial process of the Republic of Azerbaijan, conducted within its legal jurisdiction. Yet the case carries clear international resonance. All those convicted were, in one form or another, associated with the former separatist entity that illegally existed in Azerbaijan's Karabakh region for decades, an entity backed by neighboring Armenia and dissolved following Azerbaijan's September 2023 lightning operation, which brought the conflict between these two countries, between Azerbaijan and Armenia, to its conclusion. One may say that the timing is striking as well. These verdicts come at a time and moment when Azerbaijan and Armenia are advancing the interstate peace process, peace agenda, with the peace treaty itself being initial on the 8th of August, and the peace agenda symbolically reinforced in Abu Dhabi, where President Ilham Aliyev and Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan jointly received the Zayed Award for Human Fraternity. To understand the question of restorative justice, the place of these proceedings within Azerbaijan's broader reckoning with the past, and how this intersects with the evolving peace agenda between these two countries, I'm today joined by Tural Ganjali, member of the Azerbaijani Parliament, and Professor George Michelishvili, Associate Professor of European University, Tbilisi, Georgia. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much indeed for your time and for agreeing to talk to me. Mr. Ganjali, my first question is to you. We understand the circumstances in the light of which these individuals, 15 of them at least, as long as this particular trial is concerned, were apprehended in September-October 2023. And the trial itself started in January. What is the place of this exercise of jurisdiction by Azerbaijan in the context of the wider restorative justice?
Yes, excellent question, Mr. Ramashov. Of course, today is very historic day, and the day, big day, the day with capital D. The hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijani former IDPs have been waiting for justice to prevail for more than 32 years, 33 years, including myself, member of parliament representing the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, the city of Khankandi. And of course, this decree delivered by the Baku Military Court is a very clear message, strong message that Azerbaijan has finally prevailed justice, delivered justice by itself. It has so many important aspects we can discuss. First of all, it advances the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan because by apprehending and delivering justice according to the international norms and principles of international law, Azerbaijan sends very strong, clear message to international community that Azerbaijan is committed to peace agenda between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Just yesterday, we have seen very historic event in the United Arab Emirates. The President of Azerbaijan and Prime Minister of Armenia have been presented Zayed Peace Award, and plus today's Baku court's decree is additional impetus to the peace process, and it means that Armenia and Azerbaijan are on the right path, and we will follow the peace agenda And as you have mentioned correctly, Azerbaijan, it was first Azerbaijan who presented and prepared the peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Last year in August, with the participation of the President of the United States, the peace treaty was initialed between the leaders. And today, I think that with the decree of the Baku court, we are seeing a next step towards this peace. And secondly, of course, it is also, we can discuss also how, in terms of this decree delivered by Baku court, how in the face of mounting political pressure that international justice mechanisms, international court system faces globally, how important national justice mechanisms are becoming very important. Because Azerbaijan took the responsibility into its own hands. Azerbaijani courts acted upon the international law, acted upon the international humanitarian law, and finally we have seen justice today prevailing. And of course, it also helps Azerbaijan and Armenia moving towards each other and leaving all the dark and, I would say, difficult legacy of the conflict behind us. And I think that also in Armenia, the people responsible for committing and for planning this conflict must be upset. But those who have pragmatic, constructive vision must praise the court and its decision, because it gives additional impetus not only to the peace in the South Caucasus, but beyond the South Caucasus, if we are speaking geopolitically.
Thank you, Mr. Ganjali. Professor Michalashvili, I would like to hear your reflection on this verdict. This particular trial involves 15 Armenian individual citizens. I mean, all of them were apprehended in Karabakh, and technically, although back in the Azerbaijani government in 2022, 2023, when there was a process involving the dialogue, internal dialogue between Baku and Karabakh Armenians, the fundamental argument was that Baku viewed all of those residents of Karabakh as Azerbaijani citizens. Interestingly enough, those residents of Karabakh back then, including the members of the separatist entity, were also Armenian citizens. Naturally, this is an exercise of jurisdiction by Azerbaijan in relation to the crimes committed within Azerbaijani territory, in relation to those people who are also Armenian citizens. In terms of restorative justice, and in terms of that fundamental principle to which I made reference earlier, that justice must not just be done, but also to be seen as done, what is your evaluation of this particular case, which is, by the way, which does not involve Ruben Vardanyan, whose trial is a separate case?
Well, I think it's overall an important step towards the final end of the conflict. So this very dark page of history should be finally turned. And one of the very important aspects is punishing those who were responsible for the atrocities and for the protracted almost 30-year occupation of the part of Azerbaijani territory. So lots of IDPs, so up to 1 million people, immeasurable human suffering. And so a significant portion of those who were responsible for the suffering now saw the trial and saw their terms. Yes, the terms are harsh, but dura lex, sed lex. The law is harsh, but this is the law, and this is how many conflicts and how many wars should end. So this is a sort of maybe the analogy of the Nuremberg trial on the Azerbaijani soil, of the Azerbaijani land, against those who attacked this land and occupied parts of this territory. So, I mean, for the peace process, this is important. I might understand personally the sentiments of many Armenian citizens. Well, luckily today we see the leadership, so who is very responsible, who alongside Azerbaijani leadership forge along and take advantage of the current window of opportunity. The fact that they are recipients of the very important, very coveted Zayed Award is also symbolic, but also fundamental step towards the lasting peace. Many citizens of Armenia, even those who are actually constructive and for the peaceful process, they might sentimentally feel so negative because, well, they're citizens, they're countrymen. But, unfortunately, there is no lack of people who try to capitalize it, to drive the wedge between the people and torpedo the process. But I think the impetus of the process is so strong that, well, this hurdle will be overcome. So most importantly, this is a fundamental watershed event and important stepping stone towards the lasting peace.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Ganjali, what do you think will be the impact of this internal process, which is Azerbaijan's internal process, its exercise of justice within the boundaries of Azerbaijan, on the bilateral interstate peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia? I mean, it's very difficult to establish with any degree of certainty what the government in Yerevan thinks about this trial. They cannot be supportive of this trial, we fully understand that. But yesterday, when President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan received Zayed Award jointly, the optics coming from Abu Dhabi were incredibly positive. Would it be fair to say that on the basis of what we are able to discern, these two countries jointly have come to terms on some of the basic fundamentals related to the past and are already laying the foundations of their collective future? And the optics coming from Abu Dhabi yesterday were incredibly positive, and this process happening in Baku seems to be not a matter for interstate deliberation, for Azerbaijan's internal adjudication, but still part and parcel of the same peace agenda. It would be very interesting to hear your reflection on this very intricate moment.
Yeah, very good question also, Mr. Amashov. First of all, again, this is specifically internal matter of Azerbaijan because the jurisdiction and the place of the crimes committed in the territory of Azerbaijan gives Azerbaijan the sole jurisdiction over the criminals who were apprehended and detained and later brought before justice. This is first. The second, I think that, again, we expect that Armenia will not, of course, openly praise and applaud the process, the court proceedings in Azerbaijan, but it also must send clear message to Armenia, to the circles in Armenia, especially those revanchist forces in Armenia and elsewhere in the world, that Azerbaijan will not tolerate anymore any kind of intervention or the threat coming from abroad into its territorial integrity and sovereignty. But of course, we also respected international law. The proceedings were conducted upon the norms and principles of international law. The second important aspect is that by delivering decree of upon those who were apprehended in Azerbaijan, in Karabakh region, we have successfully dismantled the image of those people who were hiding behind their position. As you remember, during the war, First Karabakh War, also the war in 2020, those people responsible for committing war crimes, crimes against humanity, were counting on their position, were counting on their kind of protective positions because they were former military commanders, they were commanders and chiefs of their staff, and they were hoping that they will enjoy their impunity even after committing these crimes. So once again, Azerbaijan not only rendered justice to its own citizens, but we have also restored justice internationally, globally. If you look at the evolution of the international justice mechanisms in 21st century, unfortunately, we have seen not so many positive outcomes of international justice mechanisms in 21st century. Even the main international body, International Criminal Court, which was established in 2002 by Rome Statute, was not so very successful in deterring and preventing international crimes, especially crimes, war crimes and crimes against humanity. I think that that's why the Baku court and its deliveries and its judgments must be taken into account, must be taught in the international institutions, including international justice mechanisms and institutions, as a successful case, how Azerbaijan and its government and its justice mechanism and national court prevented and restored this justice. And again, we are bringing peace even more closer by the court decision that we have witnessed today in Baku.
Professor Michelishvili, we remember back in August 2025 when President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan signed a joint declaration, initialed the peace agreement in the presence of Donald Trump. There was one particular moment when, in a bilateral talk between Trump and Prime Minister Pashinyan, there was a mention of 23 Christian Armenians. The impression given is that there will be some attempts by some forces inside Armenia, not necessarily by the government, but by some forces, and perhaps outside Armenia as well, to make this subject international again and put a pressure on Azerbaijani government in order to achieve some form of transfer of these individuals to Armenia. What do you expect from that, and how damaging could that be to the Azerbaijani-Armenian common understanding, which is evolving and leading to what is widely described and known as peace treaty?
Yes, indeed, it's a very important and profound question. And I would also add, not only in Armenia, and unfortunately in the civilized Western countries, including the United States, a significant fraction of Armenian community there have very counterproductive, revanchist, well, I would say actually a benighted position. So very zero sum. And very unfortunately, I expect, well, I already actually read a couple of very vitriolic reports. Of course, there will be attempt to wrap it into these, like sectarian like violence, and of course like Muslim attacking Christians. Well, sometimes these sort of rhetoric has attraction, but I think like not in this case, even though, well, today we say we have this the president and part of the administration who are the people of faith, but on the other hand, they seem to be sufficiently politically mature to tell the truth from these concocted stories. So right now, also the very fact that the both leaders received the prize, the both leaders are part of the board of peace. Again, it remains to be seen how efficient this board of peace will be, but we definitely see that a number of international agencies, international organizations, including United Nations, parts of European bureaucracy, and OSCE proved very inefficient. So we see that we indeed live in a new era, and I believe that today Azerbaijan can speak from this position of strength, not only military strength but also legal strength, and there are sufficient resources to counter this calumnious narrative we sometimes certain quarters in our neighboring countries resort to.
Mr. Gangeli, I would like you to reflect on the current stage in Azerbaijan-Armenian peace process. I mean, President Aliyev yesterday, whilst receiving that award and making his remarks, delivering his remarks, said that Azerbaijan and Armenia has been living in peace over the past 6 months, and these two countries are learning to live in peace. I mean, when that 8th of August breakthrough happened, many analysts still were talking about this being a de facto peace, the peace treaty not being officially agreed, only initialed, whilst acknowledging the fact that initialing in itself is a very important development because it provides legal certainty. The President Aliyev's remarks yesterday, coupled with Prime Minister Pashinyan's statements, in view of some analysts, have cumulatively given rise to this reality that whether Azerbaijan and Armenia sign a peace deal at any point, there is a massive room for entrenching economic interaction. What do you expect from the economic interaction? We've got a couple of things really which are discernible. One is Azerbaijan sending certain petrochemical products to Armenia, or Azerbaijan sending Russian grain to Armenia via Georgia. There's a civil society level exchange happening. What else do you think should happen to make sure that this momentum is being further entrenched, particularly with the June elections in Armenia in mind?
Yeah, of course, we are building this peace process step by step. As you have rightly mentioned, the process that was cemented by initialing the peace treaty in Washington last year in August. And later we had exchange of representatives of the civil society, people visiting Azerbaijan and Armenia. And yesterday we have seen a very historic moment, the award ceremony, the awards being granted to President of Azerbaijan and Prime Minister of Armenia. And also you have rightly mentioned the economic aspect of building peace, because without economic aspect, it would be impossible to speak overall how we must advance the peace process. Again, yes, we have also the upcoming parliamentary elections in Armenia this year in summer. I think that if we continue in the positive direction, the peace-building process, it will help Armenia to successfully conduct its elections in June this year. And also, I think that if there will be no foreign interventions to the process, which I think that in the theory it's possible. Yesterday, for example, we have seen the unfortunate resolution adopted by the French Parliament, which I think that it's a direct threat to the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And I think that we have to be ready to prevent and to successfully conduct our own foreign policy, especially when it comes to the peace process. But I think that the first and foremost importance to the peace process is the signing of the common joint declaration in the United States with the participation of the President of the United States, which gives very strong impetus to this process. And I don't think that if there's any power can somehow intervene and disrupt the peace process in the South Caucasus currently, because Azerbaijan is very strong, and Armenia, it seems that up until this point supports the peace process. And if we continue proceeding and advancing this process, we will reach the final logical point of the peace process, which is the signing of the final peace treaty between our countries, which will cement and we will see eternal peace finally coming to the South Caucasus. And as a member of parliament, again, representing the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, it's our hope that in coming future, we will be living in an eternal peace atmosphere in the South Caucasus. We have been missing this, peace for so many decades, and it's time to, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gangeli. Professor Michelishvili, my last question to you, very brief. Time is very limited and time waits for no man, so I will ask very kindly for a very brief answer. J.D. Vance, US Vice President, is coming to the region for being Armenia and later in Azerbaijan. Last time sitting incumbent US Vice President visiting Azerbaijan, that particular development event happened, I think, in 2008 after the four-day war in Georgia, and that visit took place in September. So it's a very important development for this part of the world. What are your expectations? And do you expect the early beginning of the construction of the Zengezur Corridor, the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, the probability which was floating in the air for some time?
This visit is super important. One cannot actually overestimate its importance because, well, we can ideologically agree or disagree with certain tenets of what J.D. Vance has to say, but internationally, he is the number 2 in U.S. administration, and his visit means a lot. His visit means basically the political support and the willingness to contribute to the peace process. So, by the way, this is a message that the United States is strongly and staunchly alongside Armenia and Azerbaijan in their attempt to finally turn around this page and bring about peace in the South Caucasus. The peace dividends of the region are enormous, and it is very important that, United States is politically and economically here in this particular regard. So I think it is very promising. Well, of course, as a Georgian citizen, I am very upset that Georgia is missed out one more time. So I believe that actually when the region's cooperation is in place, well, there will be place for all three countries, and the region will finally find peace and prosperity, which is deserving.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much to both of you, Tural Gangeli, member of the Azerbaijani Parliament, and Professor Michelishvili of European University of British Georgia. I'm very grateful to both of you. Thank you very much indeed for your time and answers.
Thank you.
Well, the decision taken by Azerbaijani court will be discussed further. And of course, there's another completely different case involving Ruben Vardanyan, who was also apprehended whilst trying to leave Azerbaijan's sovereign borders back in September 2023. Well, this trial and the verdicts delivered today, in many ways, of course, will form a crucial part of post-conflict justice. Interpretations may differ, and so will sensitivities and even sensibilities, if it comes to that. Yet viewed alongside the intensification of the Azerbaijani-Armenian peace agenda and peace process, and the positive diplomatic optics emerging from Abu Dhabi yesterday, and earlier from Davos, Switzerland, where President Aliyev and President of Armenia attended a panel discussion, it seems to many people, including my humble self, that both nations are coming to terms with the past, whilst laying foundations for a shared and collective future. You've been watching Context, and see you very soon indeed.